a little paper on your table, which has a link if you want to download the deck. So you don't need to take pictures of the slides if you don't want to. There should be like a normal size paper, not the smaller ones, that has a little link on it. So with that said, we're going to jump into it. So I'm Joe. I'm the founder and CEO of Agency Within. And like was just mentioned, we're really a different breed of agency that's partnering with brands a little bit more strategically, a little bit more holistically across their digital media funnel. And because of that, attribution is really a core of what we do. These are some of the brands that we work with, a lot of retail, a lot of e-com, CPG, and others. And for today, we're really going to get into the weeds on attribution, and we're going to talk about it in a way that's actionable, that everybody can really take something away and implement it in a way that's simple and doesn't require technology or platform integrations. And I think in today's world, everyone's trying to solve for attribution. People are looking for this silver bullet with some kind of technology that just doesn't exist right now. So we have a methodology that we're happy to share with all of you that hopefully you guys can learn from. So this is a fun little graphic that I like to share when we talk about attribution because it's really representative of what happens in the real world. So it's like, someone saying, hey, it's the keyword, and someone else is saying, no, it's social, or it's this influencer, and then in the end, someone's just like, no, I just needed another sweater, right? Like, this actually just walked into a store or just, Googled it and found you. So attribution is hard, but there are ways to solve for it. And last click is really the enemy and where we really want to stay away from. And we joke around internally a lot or with our clients that we hope everyone else stays on last click because it creates arbitrage opportunities for us and for the clients we work with because you're overvaluing certain parts of the media funnel and undervaluing others. And that's really where we want to help educate everybody today around not only what the differences are, but how to solve for it. So I think the biggest benefit of last click is pretty simple and obvious. It's just very easy. You have Google Analytics or some other form of attribution solution that is just cookie-based and giving credit to the last click. You get a question from your CEO or your board or management team about, hey, what was the CPA in Google versus Facebook versus display versus affiliate? You can pull the answer in 2 seconds. It doesn't require any sort of explanation on top of it. Everyone understands what you're talking about, but we all know it's wrong. And the cons are that it's not looking at view-through, it's not really understanding cross-device, and with upper funnel channels, you're really starting to create a lot of bias. And I like to use real-world examples when we talk about this because when you're looking at cookies and numbers on a screen, it really masks the importance of how ridiculous last click really is. So just for a quick example, anyone here travel from, 3 hours away by flight or more? All right, cool. We'll pick on you right here. So where'd you come from? Where? Detroit. How'd you get here? How'd you get to the hotel? How'd you get into this room today? So he walked here from Detroit. Right? Like that's what last click means. And when you put it in a real world scenario like that, walking here from Detroit's obviously not how he got here, but we're totally okay with that exact same methodology of thinking when we use a last click platform and saying that it's fine and that it's accurate and that we're going to use it to make decisions. And making decisions on travel plans by walking from Detroit is probably not going to end up well, especially in the winter. So when we talk about how this makes a big difference, we pull a lot of data from clients across our portfolio, and we see that on average, using Facebook as an example and thinking about upper funnel channels, the discrepancy between prospecting on Facebook and what shows up in Google Analytics is 5x or more. So when you think about making decisions off of that kind of data, you're making decisions that are really skewing the ability for you to scale your business using the budget that you have and just letting it go a lot farther for you. So we use this methodology, and this is kind of that actionable part that I was talking about earlier that I want all of you to walk away with, and I'll kind of walk you through this in detail. But solving for attribution really has to start with audience segmentation. And if you're not segmenting your audience between prospecting, retargeting, and retention, you can't even really begin to understand what's happening in the funnel. So we don't really care what Google looks like compared to Facebook, compared to display, compared to affiliate, compared to influencer, because those channels have completely different media mix. And if your brand has a ton of spend on brand search and very little on non-brand search and a lot on social, then comparing social to search becomes just completely skewed, right? You can't compare the ROI you're getting in brand search to the ROI you're getting on someone who's never been to your site before, never heard of your brand, and someone you're reaching for the first time through a social ad on Instagram, for example. So by segmenting the audiences, we can start to make more meaningful comparisons where we want to look at prospecting on Facebook, for example, versus non-brand search, versus non-brand shopping, versus prospecting on display, et cetera, et cetera. And that automatically gives you a much cleaner lens through which to look at and start to make better decisions. And while there's a lot of talk about how you don't really want to trust the platform data, the truth is that, especially in today's world, as cookies start to become more and more fading away, and you get things like CCPA coming in that are going to make that even harder, you really need to rely on the platform data. You just need to be smart about how you use it. And using the platform data means that you can start to use their cross-device graph to start understanding what's happening in the actual conversion funnel, instead of relying on a third-party platform that's getting broken every time somebody goes from one device to another or several days pass and cookies get cleared. So when we use the data from the platforms, we're using it in a way that needs to make sense, which means you need to start to understand the look-back windows. So do we want to give credit to click? Do we want to give credit to view? How much? 50%, 100%? Do you want to go back 7 days, 30 days? These are all decisions that we need to make. The best way to make these decisions is by running incrementality testing, but you can also just use your judgment in the beginning before you get there by just narrowing down as you go down the funnel. So if you're looking at a prospecting channel, you're going to give a longer window and more credit to something like view through than you would for retargeting, where maybe you only want to give credit to a one-day view, where in retention, maybe you don't want to give any view through credit at all. But the best way to really solve for this is to run those incrementality tests, because that will then true up what look-back windows are real. So if you run an incrementality test on display, for example, and you were historically using a 28-day click, one-day view on prospecting, and that showed you that you did $100,000 in revenue, and your incrementality test shows that you only actually drove $70,000 in incremental revenue, then you know that 70% of 30-day click, one-day view is what's real and what's accurate. And then you can use that as a benchmark moving forward, so you don't need to constantly run these incrementality tests. And that's really kind of the crux of how we're solving for attribution, using methodology instead of technology in a way that creates actionable feedback loops that you can use every day in real time as you start to run these incrementality experiments and true up those look-back windows. So with that said, I'm just going to share some results of kind of how this impacts our clients. And you'll see, we'll show a few examples here, so it's not just, kind of we found one that worked and put it up here. But Draper James is a really cool brand. If you don't know it, it's backed by Reese Witherspoon, fashion brand. They're growing really, really quickly, but using this type of attribution allows them to invest in upper funnel. And for a brand like theirs that's not super big already, they're able to acquire a lot of customers by making sure that they're investing upper funnel and not just, suffocating the business through brand search and retargeting and not allowing new users to come through. So 600% increase, obviously that's an amazing result and more something more expected from a smaller brand. Greats, who's a little bit more of a mature brand, also kind of a sneaker brand, VC-backed startup that we work with, seeing similar results in terms of channel mix and how they're getting benefit out of this program. So we're seeing social increase by 28%, while CPA is also dropping. We're also seeing revenue increases from mobile. And as you expect, right, mobile and social are going to be the ones that are going to start to get the benefit of making these movements. And then Spanx, so a much larger brand and more of a global brand, to show you the dichotomy of how this works for large and small. So you're seeing customers acquired from social increase while ROI is also improving. And we're also seeing revenue from mobile increase as well. So there's one kind of hidden element that we didn't talk about yet that's also helping drive these results. And attribution alone isn't really enough to do this, but using proper attribution along with marginal bidding is really where you could start to get these results. So before we play this video, I just want to explain what you're going to see here. So average bidding, which we're showing you on the left, is when you're trying to get the same average CPA or the same average ROAS or LTV to CAC, whatever your KPI is, in different channels. And averages can be incredibly misleading because different channels or different campaigns or even below the campaign level, like an ad set or keyword, are going to have different aspects of how much you can get at the bottom. As you scale up, those curves will look different. So on these two charts, the chart on the left and the chart on the right are identical in terms of the curves and the slopes and as two campaigns or two channels. You can take your pick on how you want to interpret this. And when we play the video, you'll see with an average-based bidding solution, trying to hit the same average on both is going to acquire certain nodes of customers, which is going to be very different than marginal. Can we play the video real quick? So the left is that average CPA target. On the right is a marginal cost ceiling, which are those horizontal lines. And on the left, you're seeing that you're willing to pay to buy those customers up and above that curve on one campaign while you're not on the other. And on the right, they're both stopping at the exact same place. And the one on the right, which is a marginal-based approach, is going to have really wonky averages. So this average CPA in one might be $10. The average CPA in the other might be $30. And if you're using an average-based approach, you'd say, hey, bid down the $30 CPA campaign, bid up the $10 CPA campaign. But in reality, that would just bring you back to the average-based bidding methodology. And using marginal bidding allows you to really push out that efficient frontier curve. Because we don't really care about the average. What we really care about is where that next best dollar goes. Can you just play the video one more time before we skip through? And if you're really optimizing everything based on where that next dollar goes, you're going to let your investment go a lot farther for you because you're going to not buy a $50 conversion because you had a really low average there and instead buy a conversion for $25. And that's really powerful when you do this at a large scale across many different keywords, ad sets, campaigns, and channels. So this works intra-channel just as well as it works across channels. And this is where things become even more powerful. So you're going to be hearing from Rob from Purple next, who's also a client of ours. And these are some of the results that we've been able to generate by using a marginal-based bidding approach and some of the mix shift you're going to see. So seeing a lot of increase in YouTube, seeing Facebook increase in revenue as well, and then seeing display retargeting decrease by a huge percentage because we're seeing that on a marginal basis, we weren't really getting the return we were at those upper fringe. A simple example that I think a lot of you will kind of see this play out with is brand search, right? Like the first dollar you spend on brand search is going to be an insane ROI. And overall, on average, your brand search campaigns are going to have a great ROI. But it doesn't mean that you should be willing to go all the way to 100% impression share if that last click you got is someone who happened to be on 5 different brands' RLSA lists and everyone's competing for that same user and you're going to pay a $15 click. Again, on an average basis, you wouldn't even notice it. You wouldn't even feel it. But killing the last 2-3% of that impression share could actually barely touch your revenue and drop 10% of your cost. And that's an example of how marginal-based bidding can be really powerful. So in terms of the takeaways from there, using last click is something that we all know we need to walk away from, and using an approach like I described to you can really help you with media mix shift. Really using marginal bidding to then take advantage of the attribution in a way that will allow you to buy media more appropriately. Of course, segmentation, like I mentioned, is the core of that, and make sure that you're constantly testing for incrementality as well. So we have a little bit of time left, and I want to share a bit about creative approach because I think it really ties into the channels that we're talking about here. And when we talk about creative in today's world, we're talking about really blending the lines between brand and performance. And when you think about traditional brands that have been around for a while, they typically have a brand team and a performance team. They have different people, different budgets, different agencies, different goals. And that way of thinking, I don't believe can really exist today and be a profitable kind of experiment. Because in channels like social and mobile, you need to really blend the two together in order to build that emotional connection with the user and get them into the funnel to convert at the same time. And if you run a brand campaign and you're not getting them down the funnel, or you're running a performance campaign and you're not building an emotional connection, that's when people either won't click through or will just bounce. So this really requires proper video content that has a quick hook and also has proper landing page content that you bring people to. So the process that we go on is one that's always iterative, where we will launch a wave of assets, we'll learn from it, then we'll take the insights from that, and then we'll launch another wave of assets in a way that is constantly building upon the insights that we're getting. And when we do the production shoots themselves, they're done in a way that's very modular. And what I mean by modular is that a single production, because of the way that we shoot it, can allow us to deliver 3 different waves of assets that each one individually will look nothing like the previous one, even though they're all built from the exact same shoot. So you'll think that we did another shoot to do the second wave, but really it was just because we shot the content in a way that was so nimble. So here you're seeing a bunch of different examples of assets that we've created for some of the brands that we work with. And this kind of explains the story arc change, where it used to be about one concept, a big production value, and then you kind of hope it works. And if it doesn't, not only are you kind of screwed, but doing it again is going to be super costly. Where what I was describing is something that is going to allow you to perform much faster and be more nimble and be more cost effective, especially when it comes to doing things that are native for the platforms that you're optimizing for. And trying to recut content for social that was from a TV spot is really not a good idea. And as you can see in these examples, these are things that are truly optimized for the mobile experience. This is a great example that I think helps illustrate how powerful it can be when you mesh both of these together. So Nike's a client of ours. We manage about 90% of their budget in North America. And they have this kind of setup where they have a brand team and a performance team that are totally separate. And this shot that you see of the two women standing there is a shot that we got as a static image from their brand team. And the shot of the three shoes on a white background is what we got from the performance team. And that's such an awesome kind of striking example of how different these things can look. And then even just using existing assets and cutting it up to make it a little bit more engaging is something that you see here, where we're trying to mesh those two together and make it more Nike, make it more on brand, and make people understand what it is you're selling them. Because if you looked at that image of two women, you would never know that they're trying to sell you that shoe. And pushing that on social is not going to end up performing well. So I talked about having things with a fast hook, and you can see that here, where we're trying to make sure that we get that user's attention in the first 2 seconds. Average time spent on an ad in social feed is about 1.5 seconds. People take about 0.3 seconds to be able to digest a visual concept. So you don't need to build up to a 15-second climax in an asset on social, because no one's ever going to get there if you don't hook them in the beginning. The hook in the beginning can be your value prop or the differentiation of your product or your service, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be something that's striking and interesting that catches the eye. But if you don't get them in that first 1 or 2 seconds, they're already gone. And then I talked a little bit about landing page experiences. Landing page experiences are very important, and I think people spend so much time on ads, but not nearly enough time on the content that they land people on. So a quick poll, how many people in this room are launching at least 10 ads on social a month? Raise your hand. How many people in this room are launching at least 10 landing pages a month? So look around, right? Like almost no one. And if you think about what the entire purpose of the ad is to do what? It's to get people to click on it. But then we don't care what happens when they click on it. We just land them on a collection page or a product page. Like that is not what the user is expecting. And again, when you bring it to a real world experiment, if you're walking into this room from your hotel room and you're scrolling through your newsfeed at 50 miles an hour, and someone is lucky enough to catch you with a 2-second hook, and you watch the video for 8 seconds and you click on it, right? And then you land on a product page and it says $90 for this sweater, buy now, free shipping. Like, you're not ready for that. It's the first time you were ever exposed to the brand. You don't have any buy-in or any of that emotional connection I talked about. And now we're expecting you to place an order? Like, that's a really jarring experience for the user. And you need to have more nurturing type of content that also aligns with the ad unit that you're serving so that people understand what the brand is and why they should care. And getting them to care is what the landing page is supposed to do. The video is just supposed to get their attention and get the click. So if there's one thing that you guys take away in addition to the attribution and marginal bidding that we talked about, it would be that content is super important, especially if you're going to do prospecting upper funnel, because these people are not bought in. This is not Google Shopping or search queries where people are just looking for something that they already know they want, which means that you need to have that nurturing effect. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Hopefully you guys had some takeaways here that can be actionable for your business. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but happy to take some if we do.
Any questions for Joe? Any questions? We got one over here. All right, so just, I know who you are, but let's know who you are and where you're from.
How you doing? I'm David from Reprise. Thank you for sharing the attribution success. Curious to see if you could share some examples of how that really comes to life. I think a lot of the challenges that we face in the industry is having the right technology stack to tie everything together, or breaking down silos within agencies, especially if search might be with one agency, socials with another, and displays with another. What type of person do you need to be in that role to tie everything together, to break down those walls?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really hard, to be honest, when things are siloed. Our business model is actually built on that, where we break down those silos. When things are siloed, the reason why it's hard is because when you think about even just the basic elements of what I mentioned about how to achieve success in attribution being audience segmentation, and then with the marginal-based bidding, those two things operating across siloed teams is almost impossible to do. And the reason for that is because there's no real quarterback on a day-to-day basis. And what you'll end up with, even if you can try to solve for the attribution piece, is you're going to end up with the average-based bidding because they're not going to understand how to set marginal caps that are equal across the business. So like we have a bidding model that we built that allows us to figure out using all the inputs and the cannibalization from things like prospecting into retargeting or non-brand search into brand search to put proper bids in a way that makes it equal across the funnel. So I know it's a shitty answer, but the truth is that maybe you can try to solve a little bit of the attribution piece, but you're not going to be able to solve the marginal-based bidding piece if you have silos. And that's one of the challenges with the industry and with the setup that a lot of brands have.
All right. Anyone else? And Joe, you're here solo or you have a team?
So Anthony is here in the back, and then Guyan is here in the front. Guyan represents our Nike business, and Anthony is one of our digital leads. So unfortunately, I'll be heading out in a little bit, but definitely make sure to reach Anthony or Guyan if you have any questions, or you can just reach us at sales@Agency Within. If you want to reach me directly, I'm Joe at Agency Within. Happy to chat with any of you one-on-one if you'd like. We could set up a call. Happy to help regardless of whether we work together or not. Happy to share some knowledge and experiences together.